What do the great outdoors, a science camp, and simplicity have to do with your success? Well, you'll find out in today's episode because my guest has been helping people grow personally and professionally through experiential learning for, about 3 decades now. She is an expert at helping people recognize and apply their strengths to achieve success. She's also adept at building effective leaders who have the ability to inspire others to greatness. So whether you are a leader looking to boost your team's morale or someone who is seeking personal growth, this conversation offers several valuable takeaways. It is a high-energy, fun episode, and it starts now. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. I asked my guest on the show today because she has been cultivating leadership in young adults and children for years and in an experiential way, which we're going to get into. But in a world that is largely influenced by likes and followers, I think leadership is incredibly important, and it's incredibly important for young adults to learn how to lead themselves through that, how to navigate the world that we're living in today, especially with so much social media that's going on and not as much interpersonal interaction with everybody, especially too, as we get a little bit older and there's a lot of home-based work. So you don't have that kind of environment where you can show up as a leader and not only leading others, but leading yourself as well. And so I asked her on here today to really talk more about leadership, cultivating that leadership and how we can do that, because I think it is such an important skill for anyone to learn, no matter what your age. So welcome, Kathy Graves Farley.
Thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here because as we found out when we were starting to talk about doing this interview, I actually chaperoned some of the 6th grade science camps that you ran when you really started to get into cultivating leadership. And that was through your company, Arrowhead, right? The outdoor science camp.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I will tell you, I wanted to go to that camp. I didn't have that when I was in 6th grade, but I was so grateful to chaperone it. But I was also jealous because here I am watching these kids just go through all these different experiments and outdoor things and learning. And I thought, wow, I remember. So we had to do something with a microwave. We had to make, I don't remember, but it was something about the foil and the sun. And I don't know, but I was like, wow, this is cool. This is a way to roll up your sleeves and get your hands into it, rather than just learning from a textbook or someone standing up in the front of the class talking to you. Mm-hmm. So I would love to know first, how did you get into that and then start to work with young adults in helping to cultivate leadership?
Well, I fell into it. I applied for a position, and I got the spot to be the administrative assistant. And then from there, I grew in the business. But I can tell you within the first week, I had never seen anything like this in my life, where the kids came off the bus. They were crying the first day, and Friday they were crying again. And the first day was homesickness. The last day was they didn't want to leave home, or they didn't want to leave camp and go home.
Yeah.
It was it was marvelous. And as I rolled through different positions with the company, I really gained knowledge and experience, which is experiential as an outdoor science school, as well as for myself. It became, everything was hands-on that I learned and did. And I got to communicate with the schools and go down and speak with parents about the experience their kids were going to have, which was a real big deal because that's face-to-face, that's trust, and that's very important.
That is very important. And having those children, I know what you're saying, having them arrive at something like that, for a lot of them, it's really their first, unless they may have been in like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts where they've done some campouts and such, but that's a little different because a lot of times sometimes the family members are there, or you've got a lot of your friends with you that you've been going through some of this stuff. And here you go with your classmates. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, some are friends, but now what's going to happen? We're away and we have to learn. It's not just a fun trip. And I know what you're talking about because, again, being on that and seeing just how the kids arrived and then how they left. And it really did change things. And what I want to point out here, though, is that it wasn't just that it was fun. It was that, and that they were learning something. It truly was learning how to build the confidence within themselves. It was like a muscle that they were exercising and starting to lead themselves. And I thought that was really interesting. Because I chaperoned them. I had no idea what to expect. I was thinking, oh, it's going to be like a Girl Scout thing. It's going to be fun and we'll bond, But as much as they learned and talked about, that's what I remember, talked about on the bus ride home, everything that they had learned and done and how eye-opening it was for them.
I'll share with you, when I bought it after working there for 5 years, we did something that we bumped it up a notch because what I saw the result of was this incredible transformation of the students where they went on a night hike. And the night hike was them as a group, but the self-esteem and the self-worth was built in the process of this night hike where they would do astronomy. And then they would walk from their group to the naturalist who was maybe, 30 feet away. And they had to trust themselves enough to just walk that path, knowing someone was meeting them. At the end, it was elation. And that is what I've brought into all of my leadership teaching is you've got to be able to walk through the fear to get to the other side and realize, oh, I can do this. And it works with kids, it works with adults, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really impacts.
Well, what I like about this, though, is that, and I know that you do this now in your talks and the workshops because you lead workshops and such, is that you are creating an experience for people rather than, because listen, we've all heard the person stands up at the stage and just talks about leadership. You got to be this, you got to be, and it's one thing to hear all of that, but it's quite a different thing to actually practice it. And I'm always telling people, listen, you got to get into action. The action is going to create your clarity. But it's when you can, like what you're talking about, when you can get somebody to do something where it physically makes them take a step forward, that's a game changer.
Yeah. And on top of that is them being able to conquer it. So, and among their friends. So they've got that moral support on that end and they're able to walk through it and they've conquered whatever it is. So I love what you're sharing about that too. And your experience as a parent, being able to see all this change. I mean, they're not the same kids when they go back home. It's amazing.
They're not. And what I also noticed, and I will very clearly remember this, there were a couple of children there that were very much afraid of being there. Just first time away from home, scared, right? And just to watch the other children, it wasn't even the camp counselors, it was the other children to step up, even though they might have been the kids that, didn't have as many friends, right? That was the difference. Like you'd have some kids groups, there's always groups, right? Where they have a group of friends. And then you have a couple that are more just, maybe they're just not in as social, right? And so you have a couple like that and they'd be afraid to be there, but then how everybody started to work together. And part of that was working on a project. But also, I think that translates to later in life when you start to see this as people go into corporate environment, or when you're even now, when so many people are working from home and there's a little bit of that isolation. But when you see people come on and at least say, okay, we have to have team bonding day, or we have to do something where, even if it's a team building day too, but something where they start to come together and learn how to work together. And I think that's so important because it really does help us to tap into what we may not have known is actually there.
It's creating connection.
Yeah.
And that is, everyone seeks connection in whatever form they can find it. But when we start them at that age and they're learning that maybe the person who sat three chairs behind them, they didn't know them very well, but by the end of that time where they're team building and it's structured so that their group never leaves each other. They're always together. They're sleeping, eating, and hiking all together as a group. And it becomes an immersive experience. And it's the same for adults. When adults have a conference and they get to escape from the everyday, there's just something about creating that connection with other human beings that we so desire. And that was really a boon to watch as these relationships were born and grew, and just as same with the adults who worked there, the naturalists. Just an incredible change.
Well, also, as you're talking, it's kind of making me remember like this is an age too where kids are hitting puberty. And this is an age too where you start to get the mean girls, right? And some of these cliques things come about. And I think what I witnessed and what I just from, for having 4 kids gone through the program, just saying, it changes that.
Yeah.
Or at least softens it a bit where it's like, okay, wait a minute. We're all going to work together. There is that connectiveness, and that is so important. But I think that we've kind of lost some of that in our society. And I think mostly because, yes, we work, a lot of times you're working from home, so there is some of that isolation. But I also think just because of the social media. And it's just distanced us.
You throw that in there, and that just aggravates the insecurity of the age group. And this age group is already very hard to please as it is. And, everything is wrong, your parents especially. And bringing them to a new environment really changed the way they saw themselves. And I think it helped let them see others in a different light that they would have maybe been mean or rude or callous towards. There, like you said, there was a softening. And these kids would go home and they would carry forth what they had learned a week away from home, which was the magic. And so it never left.
Yeah, it's building the confidence and the self-esteem, which is such a huge part of leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the huge part of leadership, too, that I think has maybe been just kind of pushed to the back burner, is what I have seen in an older population, right? In corporation, you get into corporate, you're up in upper management. Okay, we're going through management, we're going into upper management and such. And then there's, okay, we're going to have a leadership workshop. But the leadership workshop is, yes, understanding how to lead others and such. But I think that there hasn't been some of the emphasis on or being confident enough, perhaps, to let go the ego.
Oh, yes.
And it's okay to let, praise other people and just take the hit if things go wrong. And I think some of that's been kind of sidestep. I mean, that's just what I have witnessed in certain I have a lot of different clients that are companies that are clients of mine. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting how your upper management works, right? And I don't know, that's just my observation. And that's why I think it's like, okay, maybe that's why I think team building and doing the things that you do, like with the workshops that you do, are so important, because it does give people that chance to, it's a different way of approaching things.
I tell you, for every campus I go to, for every adult group I walk through leadership, I make a very strong recommendation to do what we used to do, which was we had a praise can that people would just write a thank you to somebody. It could be anonymous, or it could be, they could sign their name, and they'd drop it in the bucket. And each Friday, our staff would come together. We'd review the week, and then they'd pull from the can and they'd read, so that everyone was getting credit. Everyone was being acknowledged and noticed. And that personal side of it humanizes as well as opens a door for that self-esteem to grow, and the experience is just so much more positive. There isn't it doesn't come naturally, in my opinion, as it used to. It's got to be something that organically grows from within a group of leaders, and bringing that to the forefront. It's so important to thank people and appreciate them and have that gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember there was a book written years ago? Was it Kenneth something? Anyway, it was All I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Oh my gosh, I've heard it, but I didn't read it, but I know about it. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, that book, it's kind of like what you're saying, because a lot of that book is play nice in the sandbox, right?
Yep.
Share your toys.
Yep.
And be respectful. Just be nice to people and help others as well. And I remember seeing that book and looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is so true. Because, when you watch little children, they all, sometimes, they play pretty well, but then they start grabbing things from each other, but they learn to work it out.
Yeah.
When the parent doesn't get involved.
Yeah.
They learn to work it out. And I think that's just so interesting, because where is it? And maybe I think it is just a biochemical thing that we lose that, right? Because as we get conditioned and such through society, we start to lose that ability. And then it becomes more competitive.
Oh, very much so. I see that a lot. I was doing a talk yesterday where I shared the example that I had two naturalists who were on a trail. And so the naturalists stay on the same trails for the whole week. And they have the same cabin leaders and the same group of kids. And as you might remember, and these two naturalists were going at it and bickering all week long. And the directors on Friday came to me and said, these two never want to be put together again. And I said, oh, really?
Okay. I'd be putting them together. I'll tie them together.
And that's what I did. And I said, you guys, here's how we're going to work this. You two are going to work together again. You're going to put each other in the other person's shoes. You're going to start showing empathy and sympathy for whatever it is you don't like about them. Recognize where you are just like that and work through it. And because there were kids present, they needed to work it out, which they did.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, the magic happens where when they were left alone to do what they needed to do, they came together and had an understanding and worked together again after that. It was no longer an issue.
Yeah.
But I love that. You force the hand and there it is. You guys got to work it out.
Yeah. And that's the key. Got to work it out. But the trigger too, what you're talking about is something that's triggering for somebody. It's only triggering because there's something inside of them that is similar, right? It's kind of like, it's like the thing that you don't like in someone else is the thing that you already have yourself. And so it's because we're all mirroring each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so fascinating. I think we often forget that. I mean, I know I'm guilty of it too, that we tend to forget that, where it's like, wait a minute. Everything in our world is a reflection of our thoughts. And so someone is mirroring back to us what maybe our own insecurities are. And that I like that you did that it's like, okay, you're going to have to figure it out. But that is something very important for other people to witness. And that is strong, great leadership. When you can say, hey, they can figure it out.
So can you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, truly.
So when you work with people now, because I know you work with university age, I know you work with high school and young adults and such, and some, adults as well. Is there a group that you find is perhaps a little bit easier to look at this and maybe learn leadership skills, or just go, okay, I got it?
Kids obviously are the sponges. They are so easy. But they're not sure what they're learning when they're learning it. So as they have the experience and they grow towards their adulthood, they're carrying this experience with them. But what I found was these college age students and the graduates who are like, okay, I have an idea, but how do I get all the way to the top? So that's where I work and step in with them. And we go through a kind of just a roadmap of what does that success look like? What does leadership look like to you? And what are your shortcomings? And where do we need to evaluate solutions for that? And it's all available. I mean, you've got the internet, but to me, the best experience is hands-on. The best experience, the The way to be a leader is to experience the difficulties and go through the chaos and stay in some kind of solution where you're still moving forward, but you're working through the issues with each other. And that's what leadership is coming. To me, leadership is being in the midst of the people who you are leading rather than leading from on top. I think great leadership comes from within and stays within the group and carries the weight with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will tell you that in the companies that I work with, I have seen a huge difference in the rate of turnover, the morale, and how people just really want to get on board and behind the vision of the company. When that leader is doing exactly what you said, is involved, and it's not this hierarchy. It's okay, I'm right here with you, rolling up my sleeves too, and we're going to figure this out together. And you do see a huge difference. But it's also going back to the confidence thing and the self-esteem, because that takes a lot. You have to learn that it is, like you said, it's an inside job.
Yeah.
And it starts with leading ourselves first.
Yeah. Yeah. And for each step forward, they grow themselves, which then they can pass on to somebody else. And to me, that's the other part of leadership, that once you've learned it and you can pass it forward and pass it on, now you're gifting what you've got. So you're open to more learning and more situations that you can conquer and persevere.
You said something earlier about, kids, because they're sponges, and also because they don't really know what they're learning about leadership, right? I've often wondered, why wouldn't you, if you're leading a workshop or a conference on leadership, why wouldn't you just call it something else? So people didn't think, do you know what I mean? Because, honestly, it's kind of like, why would you, because if somebody says, okay, we're going to talk about leadership, I'd be like, oh, who am I leading? Okay. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like, when you make it fun, and so I always kind of think, why wouldn't you just, because really you're talking about, okay, let's really elevate your game within yourself to achieve what it is you want to achieve.
Right. Make it experiential. In fact, that's my forte. Is I want to be hands-on in the mix, and I want to be working with others, because anybody can listen to a lecture and sit there and say, okay, I went, but what did you really get from it? It's that hand-eye. It's that when you're actively participating, the retrieve and the memory is so much more powerful. So if you're experiencing it, then you're living it, and you can pass that on.
Well, it's taking it deeper too into the subconscious or the other right? Because when you can do that, then it's like you're starting to affect that change. Yeah. You're starting to change the habits, right? Yeah. Because you're creating new neural pathways, and that's where all change comes from.
Yeah.
So give me an example of like a workshop that you would do.
I just had a blast and did a workshop on procrastination. It was called Procrastinate. And so that workshop was a 45-minute, and I did it with 3 colleges on a Zoom call. And it was so much fun because these adults who I was speaking with, I got them to get up out of their chair and change the message in their head. The example I can give you is when we're so focused on what we're doing here on the screen, and we're putting out reports or we're grading, whatever it is. And one of the suggestions is get up from your chair, go out of the door of the room that you're in, and go somewhere else in your head, take 3 deep breaths, turn back around, come in, sit down. And they came back with these great revelations. A couple of them said, I sent a text to my husband to say, I love you. Another gal said, I decided to do 5 gratitudes before I came back in the room. Somebody else said she fed the dog and got to pet him it was like the simplest things that change what's going on here, bring us back, and our perspective is fresh. Mm-hmm. And so we've changed our biochemistry by just removing ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of it.
And did any of them procrastinate and say, oh, I don't have time to get up right now?
I'll get up later.
I'll get up later. Yeah.
Later, maybe in an hour or so. No, and they were so into it. And the college kids I've done it with too, and they're all about it. The college kids, I don't know about you, but I was not a good book learner. I was very much ADHD. Just, let me do it. And so that's where I connect better with the audience, because I'm able to really see where we're going to go with this and they help it to be something even better. So it's their experience with my information, which makes it bloom.
Yeah, I just kept thinking that, when you're talking about that, I'm like, I could see some of them going, okay, I'm going to get up and do that in a minute, but I just got to, and then putting their image on Zoom and then just typing something out. Yeah. Right? Yeah, because that's so common.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's a shortcut. Putting our faces up on Zoom, that's a shortcut. I mean, if you're in it to win it, and show up all the way. Yeah. That's my other message, is I do a talk on that too.
Well, and that's important, because again, you're not showing up and you're going, okay, I'm just going to stay back here, in a sense, hiding. But, and I get it. Sometimes like, oh, I just got out of bed. It's a, early morning meeting or whatever. Right. But at the same time, that goes back to connecting with others. And that, like you brought up earlier, we want that sense of connection, because it really is important. And we've gotten away from that. Yeah. In today's world, we just have. And I know what I have seen is that because I do still have a production company, I've seen that there are more and more events coming back. Mm-hmm. And they were, some were virtual for a while, but even the ones that were virtual and companies that tried doing them virtually for a while, they still have added a live in-person one again, because people do like that.
Yeah. We need that. We want that. And I also think, and I do talk about this too, that with Zoom meetings and classes, it allows us to play small and stay stuck. There isn't a whole lot of necessary action, whereas going somewhere to your class or to a conference, to a meeting, you're actually having to participate in life. And I think that's a better energy. It gets us moving. And now you're participating, like in the beginning of our talk. It's just that you're participating and connecting all in one, which is what we need so much. We want to belong. Yeah. Everyone wants to belong. And in leadership, when you encompass everyone in it, they're much happier. And you don't have that turnover, that recidivism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're putting more skin in the game.
Yes.
It's like, it may not be money, but when you do that, you have to show up, you're investing time.
Right.
And energy. And that makes a difference.
And that's the word. You're investing in yourself. You're investing time in you. And that's very powerful. When I phrase it that way, the students are like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. They can sink their teeth into that. So classes, show up because you're investing in yourself. Everything you do is about investing in you.
That is interesting, because it's just flipping that script on that, instead of thinking, oh, I've got to go to class. I get to go to class because I'm doing this for something for the betterment of myself.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when you work with, is there any one particular, maybe leadership skill that you see, or that you think is probably the most important to have somebody kind of develop?
Oh, there's so many. I think communication is key. Communication overall is number one. And communication, connection, and commitment. Because if you're not committed, it will fall apart. Their failure rate is much higher if they're not committed. So as a leader, though, I believe that when we come from the heart and we're passionate about what we're doing, and we're able to communicate what the vision is, it just brings people closer to what's happening, what's going to happen. Yeah. And there's a buy-in. And people want to be a part of that, and they know they have a piece of it. So if people are invested in the outcome of what they're doing, it just makes it so much easier for everyone. It's a group, it's a group process.
It's getting people to buy into the vision.
Yeah.
And that's what I think can be the difficult part.
Yeah.
So how do you get people to buy into a vision? Like if you're sitting in a company or you're working with a group, let's say at a university, and you're working with maybe the teachers there, professors, and you think, okay, we've got to get everybody to buy into this.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about getting everybody to buy into it? Because there's so many different opinions, right? And just thoughts about things. Is it just saying, okay, we got to find a happy medium? Is it we've got to be able to find what resonates with you within this vision?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I would do when I was hiring. Is I would look for what their strengths were, and they would then be in charge of what it is that they really liked doing, and play to the strength and use the group. Everybody has their own set of tools and their own set of gifts, and by using those, then they're bought in, they're enlisted.
Yeah.
And they get to shine, which means that now you've got not just they're bought into what your goal is, but that self-esteem and that self-worth, and everything starts to align for them. And they would stay. They didn't want to go to a different place to work. They wanted to keep coming back.
When you're talking about all of this, my mind kind of goes to, we're talking about this obviously in a group setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, it goes back to the individual, because everything I have seen or talked with people about learning how to achieve what it is that they want to achieve, right? Achieve their dreams. It all comes down to, do you have a vision? And do you believe in that vision? Do you believe that you're capable of achieving that vision?
Right.
But it really comes back to being as simple as, can you buy into that vision? Meaning that not just this is what I really want, but I actually believe that it's possible.
Agreed. So we have them list out what their goals are.
Yeah.
What is your goal for being here? What is the reason that you want to pursue this? And then it starts to make sense, and it starts to work for them.
Yeah. And in that too, in that goal, what I've found is that it's not just the goal, obviously, but it's, why is that so important to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Why does it matter to you?
Yeah.
And that opens up all kinds of doors, because then they're looking at it from what their gain is, as well as what their advantage is in doing it and performing it and continuing forth.
Success, honestly, I think in any area of life does require that we truly trust ourselves. You've been talking about, through that leadership, it's that self-esteem and that confidence. And it's that confidence that is like a muscle that has to continually be worked and exercised, because that just builds that momentum.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's climbing a mountain. And once they get into the mode and they start to know the steps forward, they're suddenly climbing to new heights that they didn't know that they could achieve, simply by knowing what the goal is going to be, simply by knowing where it is that their experience is going to be used the best.
There is a movie, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And as you're speaking, I'm getting the image of it in front of me, because it's two things. It's not only the leadership of the team, but it's the leadership of the coach too. It's Miracle. Did you ever see the movie Miracle?
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh my gosh, I love that movie.
Right, of course, yes. So good.
My kids are like, we're not watching Miracle again. Every Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, yeah, we got to watch Miracle. But honestly, I love that movie because it's not just about, yes, the coach, who there was a deep personal reason why he wanted that team to win, because I think he got cut from the team, right? The Olympic team. And then it's the team though that comes together, because there's all these different kids from different colleges that have been competing against each other, and now they have to come together, because now they're going to the Olympics together. And it's like, okay, you are my enemy, but we're going to and they even fight it out and stuff. But what I love also in that movie, which I think it's just kind of skimmed over, is when they are playing one of the announcers says, and this is when they're in the Olympic match, and one of the announcers says, the team is skating with all the confidence of a team that has already won the gold medal. And in that moment, it's kind of like, I'd listen to that and I think that's what it is. It just comes back to they've learned how to lead themselves.
Yes.
And it wasn't the coach. It was the coach obviously saying, believing that there was more inside of them, right? Which is what good coaching is. There's more inside of you. We can do this.
Yeah.
But then also the team coming together, like you said earlier, people learning how to work together.
Yes. Yes. And that's a beautiful story. And that's exactly what used to happen every year at the camp is you get to discover, if you're willing, we get to discover who we are, what we're made of, and how far we can go. And when we hit that point where we don't think we can go any further, that's when the fun starts. And they would actually learn that they are capable of so much more. And that's what leadership is leaders are to pull us through adversity and pull us through the chaos and show us that we are capable of so much more. And then we can stand on our own and we get to be leaders in our own right.
Beautifully said. I would love to see that there are, and I know there are some things like this, but almost as if it was something that was mandated, that there was like an outdoor science camp, that continued. Like you had something like this that you had to go to, even when you go into college and it's like, I'm sorry, okay, that's part of the curriculum. Every year we have to do this. And then even when you get into, if you start a business as an entrepreneur, then maybe you go away to something like that for all entrepreneurs, not just a retreat, but I mean something that really has you hands-on and pulling that. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs do that through different retreats and such, and mastermind programs and conferences. But I think that if that was something that we all could just do on a regular basis, maybe once a year, oh my gosh, I think it'd be a game changer in the belief that people would have for themselves.
Yeah, I would love to set something like that up. You are not the first person who has suggested this, and make it like the camp experience for the 5th and 6th graders, but for adults.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's when we stop learning, we get stuck.
Yeah.
And there's so much we can offer one another, especially in a group setting like that, and trading ideas and just listening to one another and being available is also a real key.
One of the most popular workshops that I ever led as a incentive meeting, not incentive meeting planner, but incentive event organizer for incentive companies that were doing incentive trips. Because that was my productions used to do that. And the one that was really everybody wanted to do was with the Navy SEALs, because I'm close to Oceanside and I'm close to San Diego. And so the Navy SEALs would do a camp, like a ropes course type thing. And it was like a combat camp. It was crazy, but I'm telling you, it was so good for a lot of these people that came and did it. And it was a lot of, it seemed that it was the, insurance brokers, it was insurance agents mostly that signed up for it, and then sales teams. And it was crazy because the tank would come up out of the water and then these Navy SEALs would get it. And then I'm telling you, they would storm the beach and nobody on the beach knew what was going on because nobody was told what was going on, only the meeting planner, right? And us as the organizers, right?
Right.
And they'd be sitting there going, wait, what? And it was drill time. I mean, and you had to, you paid attention and you went through it. And I'm telling you, that had the highest rating of any kind of team building corporate thing that we did, because what it did was it was a lot of them would say, man, I'm just so wiped out. But at the same time, it had them it had them reach deep inside of themselves and pull out more of that potential that they didn't even know was there.
Yes.
And it was just incredible to watch. Honestly, it really was, because when you look at something like that, you can't help but know there is so much potential in all of us that we haven't even scratched the surface of, and that we're fully capable of, that I don't even think we give ourselves credit for.
I agree with you. It's in there. It's always in there. It's just, it's either the adversity or whatever it is that that we think is holding us back when we have that breakthrough moment. And now we're set free from whatever that was, and we get to go forward. We get to lead and be an example.
Did you yourself ever have, or can you point to a time where you felt like you had a breakthrough moment?
I did. 3 days before I bought the camp, there was an accident, and one of the students was hurt very badly. And the owners had told me that that I needed to take charge, that their names were not to be mentioned. And I said, okay. And I had a decision to make whether I wanted this or not, and if I was ready to pursue this or not. And I found out when all was done and said, we'd lost about 80% of the business because of the accident. And it was then that I knew I needed to do this. This needed to go on. This camp had to exist. And I walked through that, and it was wild. It was scary. It was hard. But the hard built inside of me the ability to see past what was so hard and keep focused on what was the end game. And the end game was to continue to bring kids up to the camp and create a successful, safe, and wonderful environment and keep doing this thing for years to come. And it was at that time, too, that I decided I wanted to run camps out of as many of the camp properties on the mountain as possible. And so I changed my email address to Ms. Camp as if it was all mine. And that was the vision. That was the goal. And through that tough time, we grew into the most highly sought out outdoor science school for 5th and 6th grade students. And our waiting list was 2 years long. Wow. So it was hands-on learning and walking through the dark and the scary to get to what was on the other side, which was, you can make it anything you want. What do you want? And I wanted this to go forward and stay strong. And we did.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. And that's a great point. You can, whatever you want. So what is it that you really want?
Yeah.
And not allowing the outside circumstances to shut you down.
Oh, yeah. Learning to shut out the noise and stay focused on what's really important here. What matters. And that's just core. Yeah. And that's where I gained the strength to go forward, because what was important was those kids coming to camp. Yeah.
Focus first. I love that. Well, I, for one, am very glad that you continued that camp too.
Thank you. It was so neat that you were there. I was, oh my gosh.
I know, that's so funny, but I will tell you, yeah, I was jealous though. I'm like, hey, I get to do that now. I'm telling you, if you do something, you start going, okay, I'm going to start doing a camp like that for adults. I'll be there.
You're first on my list. Yes, we're going to make it happen. It's entirely possible.
I'll do it with you. I'll organize it with you. I would love to. That'd be so much fun. It really would.
It would. We'd probably have more fun planning it. We can do this and this and this, and oh my gosh.
Exactly. Yeah. But, I love that because, again, it goes back to, kind of that book, Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. It's simple. Yeah. I think we oftentimes overcomplicate everything. And it's like, and part of that I think is because, look, the internet's been great and it puts a lot of things at our fingertips, but I also think it puts so much at our fingertips that we get lost. Yep. And that's where we get things just like, and we don't know how to focus. And that's when things become overcomplicated. And it can just be as simple as like, look, wake up, you're nice to other people, and you're nice to yourself. You high five yourself and you say, okay, let's go have some fun, because honestly, life should be fun too, and not difficult.
Yes. Yes. I see the students I work with often overwhelm is their first emotion that they can share is, I'm just overwhelmed. And so when I work with them, I try to take the overwhelm out of what's really happening and get them focused on what's vitally important here for you. And what can you just kind of knock off to the side? Because there's so much pressure. Social media, the likes, oh my gosh, drive me nuts. Yeah. But when they discover that it's not so much about the likes, but it's the like within themselves, that's when things start to change for them and they recognize that, oh, okay, maybe this is not as important as I used to think it was. And that's growth.
Yeah, that's growth.
Yeah.
Yep. You can't grow from the outside in, it's from the inside out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate this. I really love this conversation because I think the whole thing about leadership is important, but I also think that people don't realize that leadership is not all about learning how to, lead others and manage others. It's more about developing the confidence and the love of self, truthfully, that then turns around and is reflected out to others as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leadership has become a buzzword for property, prestige, likes. And the truth is, leadership is the key to everyone's own personal and professional success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for being here.
Thanks, Kim. I'm so glad I got to be here with you today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I will definitely be looking forward to, we'll have to talk about this offline, but to do something, because I think that'd be so much fun.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me here today. If you want some help achieving your goals, you can grab the Success Bundle link down below, or head over to my website, kimkellythompson.com, where I have several free resources to help you. If you like what you've heard today, please consider hitting that subscribe button and join me throughout the week for episodes that will help you make your dreams your reality. I'll be back again soon with another edition of Shift or Get Off the Pot.